I'm clipping a little bit. Where the hell? Let's go. So, fireside chat. Second fireside chat. My hair's a bit wet. I'm snowing outside. It's not actually snowing, but I'm trying to keep the analogy going. It's difficult. This fireside chat it seemed to be a good idea. It's hard to pull it off, really, when you're living in a tropical climate. Why the hell would you have a log fire? Anyway, stick with it. So, I just wanted to talk about emotions. Week 6, if you got through week 6, as well as there being a lot of content, is all on indigenous psychologies and indigenous methodologies. If you got through that content, what you'll have noticed was the tone changed, the emotional tone changed. And that was largely because we're talking about some quite upsetting things. As a history of atrocities against indigenous people and why psychology has got to do something a bit different to how it's been working in the past, largely because psychology contributed to the awful things that happened to Aboriginal Australians and Torres Strait Islanders. So it was quite heavy material, so there wasn't so much room for laughing and joking. So it was a bit sad in places, hard going in places as well. So the tone kind of changed a little. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there is an emotional tone to this unit. Well, I hope there is. I mean, I'm trying to do it with my dad jokes, to bring humour in, which is kind of an emotional response. So I'm doing that, putting in little movie clips. You kind of see the way that these lectures, they're kind of traditional in a way. I've got the damn PowerPoint, got log fire, forgetting my backdrop. So, I've got the log. Usually when I'm doing the lecture stuff, I call it a lecture. It's got a PowerPoint presentation. It's still a traditional form of delivery. It's still that sort of content, but trying to bring emotions into it, because in qualitative research, emotions are really important. It's really important to engage in your emotional responses to both the topics you're researching, but also participants' experiences in relation to the topic. As part of the way that we can show empathy with our participants, it's also a way that we can engage ethically with what we're doing, largely through engaging with our emotions, and in this instance, trying to feel empathy for our participants. We don't want bad things to happen to them, but we also want to get into the emotional content of what they're describing. In positivist research, so much of it is detached. It's constructed around that notion of really, it's all about rational decision making in terms of how to go about the research procedure, but also a kind of emotional detachment really from your participants. You don't engage or get close to your participants. It's always about ensuring there's sufficient social distance between you and your participants so you can be objective. When it comes to qualitative methods, we want to be subjective. So that's where our emotional responses become important. We're also trying to understand things from our participants' frame of reference, from their experience. And that's why we engage emotionally with the content of what we do. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but lived experience is kind of not only about us thinking, but it's also about us feeling. We have thoughts and feelings, and they're enmeshed, and that's what contributes to our experience of things. So that's kind of why we want to engage emotionally with what we do. It's kind of important. It's also, when I talk in lecture 4, when we get on to qualitative data analysis, about the importance of getting close to your data. In thematic analysis, about familiarizing yourself with the data, getting close to the data. It's almost like walking in your participant's shoes. And again, you can't do that just by trying to think the thoughts that your participants have. It's also about trying to engage with the feelings that your participants are feeling, that full immersion. I think when you go to the cinema, It's an experience where it makes you think and feel at the same time. If it just makes you do one and not the other, then it can be quite unsatisfying, and often you don't feel as though it was really a properly told story. So the same sort of thing applies to qualitative. Emotional aspects are really important. So that's really it. That's the sort of reflection. So, yeah, in traditional ways of doing psychology, we kind of, we're a bit robotic, We keep that emotional distance from both the thing that we're researching, but also the participants involved in our research. In qualitative, it's important to engage with the emotions and things. There's a broader issue here, which is quite deep. And it's just an argument. Have a think about it. But week 6 was all about the way that psychology has been pretty unprogressive, actually quite damaging in relation to the lives of indigenous people. Historically it did some bad stuff. It was psychology that classed indigenous people as morons. That's essentially what we were doing in psychology. And you can only really do that when you put social distance between you and the people that you're doing research on. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's really hard to do nasty things to people who are close to you. Okay? Well, there are exceptions. When you're too close to someone, you can hurt people's feelings. But generally, it's quite difficult to do nasty things to people when there's social distance. We learned that from the Milgram experiments, if you remember, where they, that thing where he was pretending to shock, but we got people to pretend to shock experimental subjects. They weren't actually delivering shocks, but they thought they were. And the only way people could really do that was if the people that they were applying to shocks to were in a different room to them. As soon as you brought those people into the same room and you asked the participant to actually push down on the person's hand onto a shock plate and then deliver the shock, most people couldn't do that. Because once you get close to someone, it's hard to do them harm. We know this from war as well. That soldiers find it really difficult engaging in warfare. Pilots who fly drones find it much easier to bomb people than soldiers on the ground who have to shoot people. It's a traumatic experience doing harm to people who are close to you. So there's a lesson in history, really, that what we find is tyrannical political systems operate on the basis of if they want to do harm to a particular population within their society or to people of a different society, that they construct a way of thinking about those people that puts social distance between people and these others. The way that we do it at the minute with immigrants, that there's we hear how immigrants are very different from us. They're other. They're not like us. They're very different. They have different belief systems, different culture. They're not like us at all. And it's putting that distance between us and these other people that allows governments and corporations to do bad things to these other people because we don't feel a social connection to them. When you bring people close into you, you have that social connection. When harm is done to people who are close to you, it's almost like harm is being done to you. And that's in qualitative research, that's the kind of point we get to when we're hearing stories from our participants where they've been hurt by something. We know we're getting close enough to the data when we start to feel hurt as well. And when participants are talking about topics that are really important to them, then when we're socially close to participants, when we're feeling the emotions that they feel, those topics become important to us. And that's really important for research, because that is the very thing that enables us to engage in social change. It gives us a motivation for change. So rather than us just documenting, for example, violence against women, in a qualitative paradigm, we can kind of feel the pain that people are going through, and it gives us the motivation to engage with others in terms of social change. Most social movements, in fact all social movements, were started through emotion. Not happy feelings, but feelings of anger, sadness, pain, hurt, and so on. These are the great motivators. These are the great social mobilizers. Anyway, getting a little off track here. But what I'm saying is that in qualitative research, we get close to our participants. It is a way that we can avoid doing harm to them, but it's also a way that we can get close to the data and start to get a fuller, more in-depth understanding of their experiences by kind of walking closely through their lives with them. Does that make any sense? God, I should superimpose a little glass of sherry in my hand just in case that didn't make any sense at all. Anyway, I'll leave it with you. See how you feel about that. But yeah, I'm deliberately seeking to get you to engage emotionally with the material. And I'm doing that unapologetically because it's consistent with a qualitative approach. And it might feel a little unsettling if you're used to that scientific model of being distant, objective. What I would call a little psychopathic. What am I fiddling with my comb for? I don't know. So that's all. Just going to sit by the fire and warm up because it's chilly in this alpine cottage that I'm in, even though I appear to be sweating. Okay, so till next time, ta-da. I don't know if that made any sense at all. I really don't know. Did that make any sense? Am I going to be able to save this in an edit? Oh, bugger it. I'll play it. And you'll see how, yeah. I'll play it. You know, it's that thing where just, it makes you quite vulnerable. And you show all your human foibles. Take the risk though.